Welcome to the Madison Miller Podcast Special Edition Series 2023 College Football Season Predictions. This podcast will be the Big Ten. I'm going to go over my predicted standings for each division and then do my pick for the Big Ten Conference Championship game. And then we'll do some futures. Alrighty. So, without further ado, here we go. Big Ten. So, East Division, I have winning this division with a record of 11-1 overall, 9-0 in conference play. Of course, the Ohio State Buckeyes. I think this is a bounce for Ohio State. I think they are awesome. I think that they have a chip on their shoulder. They have lost to Michigan the last 2 years, and they tried to stop that this year. Kyle McCord takes over for C.J. Stroud. We don't really think it's going to be an upgrade, but Marvin Harrison Jr. is still there. He's the best wide receiver in college football. Trayvon Henderson still there, the running back. Emeka Kuba on special teams. Good offensive line. Good pass rushers in Jack Sawyer and JT Tumalo. Tommy Eichenberg's back for his sixth year. A good secondary led by Denzel Burke and Lathan Ransom. They have two kickers, Noah Ruggles and Parker Lewis, and then Jesse Mirko the punt. Other big losses, including Stroud, are Paris Johnson, DeJuan Jones on the line, Zach Harrison in the pass rush. Oh, Luke Leipler on the line too, and then safeties Ronnie Hickman and Tanner McCallister. There are some big losses here, but I think they have the talent to overcome it this year. Coming in second in division, I have with an 11-1 record, 8-1 in conference play. The Penn State Nittany Lions, that's right. Penn State ahead of Michigan this year, guys. Drew Allard, the sophomore quarterback, is back. Nicholas Singleton's one of the best running backs in the country. Katron Allen's there to back him up. Good receiver in Keandre Lambert-Smith. Dante Cephas, the transfer, comes in. They have a great offensive line, a better offensive line than Ohio State's, arguably. A couple of good pass rushers in Chop Robinson, Abdul Carter, and Adiza Isaac. A good secondary led by Kalen King and Keaton Ellis. And a reliable kicker in Riley Thompson, who's a transfer. Some big losses, though. They'll miss Parker Washington. They'll miss the leadership of Sean Clifford. Drew Scruggs on the offensive line. They'll miss Joey Porter Jr. in the secondary. There are some losses, but I think Penn State's going to be awesome this year. Coming in third in the division, I have at the 10-2 record, 7-2 in the conference, the Michigan Wolverines. I think Michigan takes a little bit of a step back after making the college football playoff last season. J.J. McCarthy's the quarterback. Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards are back at running back. Cornelius Johnson back at receiver. Colson Loveland at tight end. A very good offensive line. Arguably the best one in the conference, although you can make a case for Penn State, as we talked about earlier. Drake Nugent's a transfer coming in that will help that unit. Really good pass rush led by Josiah Stewart and Junior Colson. Mason Graham, the young defensive tackle, is still there. Decent secondary, too. James Turner's the kicker. He's a transfer coming in. Big losses on the team. Mozzie Smith, the interior defenseman. Luke Schoonmaker, the tight end. They'll miss Ronnie Bell at receiver. And then A.J. Henning, their return guy, transferred. And then Jake Moody was a good kicker, too. He'll be missed. And a couple good corners they lose, too. DJ Turner and Gemmin Green. So Michigan's in a little bit of a transition phase, but I do think they'll still be relevant. Coming in fourth in the division, I have the record of 9-3 overall and 6-3 in conference play. The Maryland Terrapins. I think Maryland is going to be good, and I think Tolia Tagovailoa is going to be one of the breakout quarterbacks in the entire country this year. Roman Hemby is a good sophomore running back. Veteran receiver room with Jayshon Jones and Tyrese Chambers. Corey Deitch is a tight end is good. Offensive line isn't very good. And I think this team's going to be involved in a lot of high-scoring games. I don't like their defense very much. Only two starters that are really good return. And then they have a transfer coming in at corner. Colton Sprangler's a good kicker. They'll miss Chad Ryland. He was reliable. Jalen Duncan, the tackle, they'll miss. But I do think Maryland will be good, and I think Talia will make a big leap this year. Coming in fifth in the division, 4-8 record, 2-7 in conference play, the Indiana Hoosiers. I don't think Indiana's going to be very good. Jalen Lucas at special teams is good. Camp Camper, good at receiver. Andre Carter's a transfer coming in. They have a good punter in James Evans. They just lose some good guys that are transfers. Son McCullough, the young pass rusher, they lose. Cam Jones, they lose. So I don't think this team's going to be very good, and they have a lot of unlucky breaks in their schedule. Coming in 6th in the division, 4-8 record overall, 2-7 in conference play, the Rutgers Golden Knights. I don't think Rutgers is going to be very good, and I feel bad for Greg Schiano personally because I thought that was the right decision for the Scarlet Knights to bring him back, and I thought that fan base was going to be ignited because of it, but they really haven't had success with Greg as Rutgers last season went 4-8, and then they made a bowl game in Schiano's first year back, but they lost. They went 5-7 and made a bowl game because the crop was weak that year. And in the COVID year, they went 3-6, and that was the conference only year, but that was COVID. So it's been a disappointing era for part 2 of Greg Schiano. But I do think Rutgers will have a good defense. They have some very talented players on defense that are juniors and seniors. But their offense is just anemic. And they do lose one of their special teamed aces in Aaron Kruzicek, which is a big loss. And in the cellar of this division, 3-9 overall, 1-8 in conference play, the Michigan State Spartans. Oh, where have the Michigan State Spartans gone? They used to be a dominant program, and all of a sudden, they're not. Mel Tucker, it's in year 4. They went 5-7 last year, so they were a win shy of a bowl. But they were awesome in Mel's second year, and they won the Peach Bowl over Pitt. And in the COVID year, they went 2-5, so they were worse than Rutgers in the COVID year. So Sparty has taken a big fall from grace in this sport, unfortunately. They have a couple good offensive linemen, and it questions everywhere else offensively. Decent pass rush, Jalen Howell, Simone Barrow. A couple good linebackers. Jaden Reed's a big loss for that offense. Don't underestimate that. All right, the West. Coming in first in the West Division, 9-3 overall, 7-2 in conference play, the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Yes. Minnesota has a lot of pieces offensively. A lot. They have Sean Tyler coming in as a transfer. Quentin Redding on special teams is really good. Elijah Spencer's good. He's a transfer. Chris Ottman-Bell's in year 6. Daniel Jackson's a senior. Brevin Spanford, redshirt senior at tight end. They have a couple of decent offensive linemen. And Corey Crooms at receiver, too. A couple good pass rushers. And a couple good defensive backs. And they are some big losses on this team, but none bigger than center John Michael Schmitz, who got drafted by the Giants last spring. But I do think that Minnesota is going to be good. Second in this division, 8-4 overall, 6-3 in conference play, the Wisconsin Badgers. Wisconsin gets hyped every year, and they've fallen flat on their face, it feels like. And they could prove me wrong and go 10-2 and play Ohio State in the Big Ten title game, but we'll see. Braylon Allen's back at running back. They have a good receiver in Chimere Dike. Their offensive line's really good, which helps their offense. They have a good pass rush with Darian Varner and CJ Gatz. Their secondary has one guy that's reliable in Hunter Wooler, and a kicker, Nathaniel Vakos, who's a transfer. Big losses on this team. Joe Tippmann, the center, and Keanu Benton, the defensive tackle, and then the running back transfer, Isaac Granado. Coming in third in this division, I have the Iowa Hawkeyes, 8-4 overall, 6-3 in conference play. Iowa was hideous at times last year, but this is a reliable program that Kirk Ferentz has. And they just find a way to mix and match and work. They have a great offensive line, a lot of veterans. Caleb Johnson's a good running back. They have a good tight end in Luke Lakey. They always have good tight ends. Pass rush is good, led by Joe Evans. And then they have good interior guys in Logan Lee and Noah Shannon. A good special teamer in Cooper DeJean, the cornerback, and then Quinn Schutel as well. And they have reliable kicker and punter too, which is good. They lose Sam Laporta, Lucas Van Ness, and Jack Campbell. Those are 3 big losses on that team. But I think they'll find a way to overcome those losses to 8 wins. Coming in 4th in this division, 7-5 overall, 5-4 in conference play, the Illinois Fighting Illini. Illini. I can't say that word. Interesting team. Last season, Illinois went 8-4. They had a good year last year, but I think they're 1 win worse, and that's okay for a team that's usually a laughingstock. Isaiah Williams at wide receiver, good special teamer too. Josh McCray at running back, he's a sophomore. Good offensive line, which helps. Good pass rush, so they're going to be in a lot of low-scoring games, you would think. Reliable kicker and senior Caleb Griffin. Some big losses, Chase Brown, Alex Polzewski, the tackle, and, of course, Devon Witherspoon in the secondary. Coming in 5th, 4-8 overall, 2-7 in conference play, the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Nebraska is always disappointing. It feels like whenever they hire a new coach, I feel like it always goes sideways. Matt Rule, if I'm not mistaken, I think this is year 1 for him at Nebraska. Yes. And then, obviously, last year, they dumped Scott Frost 5 games into the season. And we knew after week 1, after they lost to Northwestern in Dublin last year, that he was going to be fired within, the first 6 weeks of the season. It reminded me of Clay Helton at USC after USC lost a random game ago. Clay Helton's as good as gone, and he was literally gone the next day. And that's what that reminded me. We have a couple of candidates for those types of coaches this year, but we'll hold off. We'll hold off until the end. But I don't think there's any in the Big Ten. But Nebraska, Anthony Grant, the running back, suspended. Unfortunate. They have a good tackle in sophomore Teddy Brazaka. Decent defense. 5 starters return on that unit, so that's pretty good. They have a good punter in Brian Bashini. Big losses, Trey Palmer and Garrett Nelson. Coming in 6th in the division, 2-10 overall, 2-7 in conference play, the Purdue Boilermakers. I think Purdue's going to disappoint. They're not as good as they usually have been. Devin McCoby returns at running back. He's a sophomore. Decent-ish offensive line. Maybe Purdue proves me wrong. Their defense, 3 starters returning on that side of the ball. That matter in terms of point spread and such. But Aiden O'Connell is such a big loss for that team. And so is Charlie Jones. So is Payne Durham on offense. They lose Branson Dean and Jack Sullivan, 2 good pass rushers and transfers. So I think this Purdue team's in trouble. And in the cellar of this, 2-10 overall, 1-8 in conference play, the Northwestern Wildcats. Obviously, their coach, Pat Fitzgerald, got fired after the hazing situation. So that team is already a team in turmoil with David Braun, who's an intern. I just don't see how they challenge for a bowl this season. They have a lot of guys that they have to replace, including Peter Skoronski, the offensive tackle, and Evan Hull at running back. Cam Porter's still there at running back. He's a junior, and then they have Bryce Gallagher as a pass rusher. Those are the only 2 guys of significance that return, and then they get A.J. Henning as a special teamer in a transfer portal. So that team's in trouble, Northwestern. All right, the Big Ten title game. In the east side of Ohio State, the west side of Minnesota, Ohio State's just better. And they have the better talent, better offensive line. Minnesota has a lot of good skill guys. Maybe it's a shootout, but I think that Ohio State has more talent on the defensive side of the ball than Minnesota, and that's what it will come down to. And I do trust Ryan Day more than PJ Fleck at Minnesota. So I'm going to go with Ohio State over Minnesota to win the Big Ten title game. All right, bold predictions for this conference. I have a few in mind. And there's one that I want to pull the trigger on, but it might upset some guests of the show and the listeners of the show. Because this is a team that's talked about a lot in the tri-state area, and that's the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. I'm going to predict that Greg Schiano won't be back in 2024. That's a dysfunctional program. They really just would fire coaches left and right. I mean, the basketball coach, Steve Pickle, probably has a lifetime contract considering that he got Rutgers to be relevant in basketball. But I feel like Greg Schiano was just a fan outcry to get that fan base excited again. And sometimes that doesn't always work out. So I do not think that Greg Schiano will be back in 2024. And I'm also going to predict that Matt Simon, the offensive coordinator of Minnesota, will get a head coaching job somewhere, and I won't be shocked if it's Northwestern. And I think he'll be in play for Rutgers too. And another fun prediction is that I think that Ohio State will beat Michigan for the first time since 2020. Long time coming for Ohio State fans, as some would think, considering Michigan got them twice in a row, including once at the Horseshoe in a blowout game, and I bet on Michigan both times when they beat them outright, and I think I did pick them outright once, but I picked them to cover in the other game. So I think that finally turns back in Ohio State's favor. And another random bold prediction I thought about is that the Michigan State Wolverines part ways with Mel Tucker. I know that he had that great year 2 years ago, but it's what have you done for me lately? And I think Michigan State's going to be disappointing. So I think that Mel Tucker's the fall guy. Mel Tucker lands on his feet at a program where they lose its head coach that gets a better job. And he lands somewhere like in the MAC, maybe Ohio or Coastal Carolina, or like how Clay Helton landed on his feet at Georgia Southern, like that kind of situation. And I think that's what's going to happen with Mel Tucker. All right, let's do some futures. We'll start with the conference over-unders. So Illinois is at 6.5. I have them at 7 wins. It's just the overall pass. Indiana's at 3.5. Juice to the over, pass. Iowa's at 8.5. Juice to the under, pass. Because these are pretty close to what I project. Maryland, 7.5. Ooh, minus 110 HY. Ooh, that's an over I like a lot. Michigan, over under 10.5. Pass. Because I have it at 10. But the under's plus money. Michigan State's 5.5. Over 5.5 plus 146. Under's minus 180. Michigan State under's one I might consider like in a parlay or something. Minnesota 7.5. Overs plus 138. Unders minus 170. Circle that one. Nebraska's 6.5. Overs plus 114. Unders minus 140. I like the under in that one. Northwestern's at 2.5. Overs minus 144. Unders plus 118. Pass. Ohio State over under 10.5. This is pretty much banking on them winning the conference and beating Michigan. So overs minus 115, unders minus 105. That's a stay away, though. Penn State's 9.5. Juice to the over. I pass. Purdue's 5.5. Overs plus 130, unders minus 160. I love that under. And Wisconsin's 8.5. I have them at 8 wins. Juice to the over. So the win total I like the most is over 7.5 wins for Minnesota at plus 138. That's the one I like the most in terms of win totals. Conference. Ohio State's the favorite, of course, at plus 165. Michigan is plus 180. Penn State 6-1. Wisconsin plus 950. Iowa 12-1. Minnesota 20-1. Illinois 50. Maryland is 70. Nebraska 75. Purdue 95. Sparty 150. Northwestern 420. Indiana 420. I just have to look for Rutgers' number. To find it. So, I'm trying to find up, Vegas Insider. Hello. Rutgers is same price as Northwestern and Indy. So the value plays Penn State at 6-1. That is banking on them. That is banking on some round robin thing of Michigan beats Ohio State again. Ohio State or Penn State beats Ohio State and Ohio State loses to Michigan, or the scenario works out like it's a round robin. Michigan loses to Penn State loses to Ohio State loses to Michigan. But who would get the tiebreaker there? So the Penn State 6-1 is one that I consider. Maryland at 70-1's fun. But let's be honest, it's probably donating your money at that point. Minnesota at 20-1 is a good one too that I would consider. And then we have the division, because the Big Ten for some reason refuses to, Penn State for the division is plus 470. With obviously Ohio State being the favorite, plus 115, Michigan plus 120, Maryland 40-1, Michigan State 95-1, Indiana 140-1. Big Ten West, Wisconsin's favorite plus 140, Iowa's plus 260, Minnesota plus 470, which is something that I would consider. Illinois 550, Nebraska 14-1, Purdue 18-1, Northwestern 110-1. That's funny. Alrighty. So that's it for the Big Ten. Next up will be the Big 12.